Hello and welcome back to What's the Word. Today is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. And today the word comes from Proverbs 3 verse 5, which reads, "Trust and rely confidently on the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight or understanding." Simply put, you're not going to understand everything that happens or is happening to you or through you and around you. If you put your trust in the Lord, love Him with all your heart, then one, you're going to get vision on the things you're going through, and two, you're going to be in the right place at the right time, and everything will work out for your good. Taking a look at some scores and starting with college basketball. Maryland was in action this past Friday, defeating Wingate 100-58. The Wingate Bulldogs scored the first 4 points of the game, then Maryland woke up, cruising to a 42-point victory over their Division II opponent. 5 Terps scored in double digits, while 4 others scored the first points of their collegiate careers. Next up for the Terps, they'll be on the road to face 7th ranked Michigan today at 7 p.m. On to the NHL, where the Washington Capitals were in action twice over the weekend. The first on Friday, defeating the Buffalo Sabres 2-1. Rookie goaltender Vitek Vanacek made his NHL debut after 5 years in the American Hockey League, making 30 saves and only allowing a goal on a shot that was deflected by his own player. The Capitals took 5 penalties on the game, but the good news is that their penalty kill killed off all 5 of those. The team, however, had no power plays of their own. The rest of the goals were scored by Jacob Vrana, who notched his 2nd of the season, and Tom Wilson, who also had an assist on the night. Washington's next game was a Sunday matinee against their rivals, the Pittsburgh Penguins, which they lost in a shootout 4-3. Starting off, Pittsburgh's first goal should have been disallowed for what I thought was an intentional kicking motion. You can see it here. It looks like Pittsburgh's goal scorer kicks out his skate, intentionally deflecting the puck into the net, but the play stood and Pittsburgh went up 1-0. Alex Ovechkin scored his first goal on the season and also added an assist. The remaining goals came from Nick Dowd and Nicholas Backstrom, who scored on the power play. Overall, Washington was 1 for 4 on the man advantage. Again, they took 5 penalties on the game, but once again their penalty kill came up big, killing all 5 of them. Goalie Ilya Samsonov made 24 saves on 27 shots, but as I mentioned, I thought the first goal should have been disallowed. And the second goal you see here, Samsonov made a bonehead play behind the net, turned the puck over, and unfortunately it did find its way underneath the crossbar.
Yeah, I see the white thing move. It moves. Yeah. That's right, Boosh.
In the shootout, the Penguins' Jake Gensel scored the only goal in the 4th round. Alex Ovechkin had a chance to knot things up, but he was unsuccessful. Next up for the Capitals, they will rematch against the Penguins today at 7 p.m. Another year, another disappointing divisional round playoff exit for the Baltimore Ravens, losing to the Buffalo Bills 17-3. If there was any indicator how things would go, cornerback Marcus Peters was fined $15,000 before the game for last week's logo antics after defeating the Tennessee Titans. On Baltimore's opening drive, kicker Justin Tucker missed a 41-yard field goal and then would go on to miss a 46-yarder in the second quarter. The wind was a real factor in this game, as Bills kicker Tyler Bass also missed 2 field goals, and Sam Cook had a botched punt that went only 23 yards, leading to the Bills' first points of the game. Trying to build off of his first career playoff victory, quarterback Lamar Jackson threw the ball 24 times, completing 14 for 162 yards. On the ground, it was a different story, as Buffalo did a pretty good job containing him, only allowing 34 yards on 9 carries. But of course, for all of Lamar's haters, they're only going to talk about the costly pick 6 that came on 3rd and goal from Buffalo's 9-yard line. The interception was Lamar's first in the red zone of his career, but of course it came after Buffalo had already scored, and it allowed them to put another touchdown on the board. Lamar unfortunately was done shortly thereafter as he left in the fourth quarter with a concussion. That, of course, coming off of center Patrick McCarry's fumble, 1 of 2 on the day, and he could have had some more if it was not for some athletic plays from Lamar Jackson. Ravens quarterbacks on the day were sacked 4 times, losing a total of 32 yards. The offensive line just didn't do a good job protecting them as they allowed 8 quarterback hits. The game was a little bit out of the ordinary as Baltimore threw for 222 yards, but only ran for 150. Running backs Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins had similar totals of 10 carries for 42 yards, but J.K. Dobbins had 2 costly drops. The first on the drive where Sam Cook shanked the punt for 23 yards. J.K. Dobbins had an opportunity to keep the drive alive, but instead they had to punt, leading to Buffalo's first points of the game. The second coming late in the fourth quarter with Tyler Huntley as the quarterback. J.K. Dobbins dropped the 4th down pass and Baltimore couldn't put any points on the board. Speaking of Tyler Huntley, he ran the ball 3 times for 32 yards and threw for 60 yards. Pretty good showing for him in relief of Lamar Jackson. But at the end, Baltimore obviously had to throw the ball, couldn't really rely on the rush too much, and that ultimately led to the skewed numbers. Defensively, again, it was a story of not getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, only accounting for 2 sacks from Matthew Judon and Pernell McPhee. However, they only allowed 32 yards rushing, but really the story was the passing game. Josh Allen and specifically Stephon Diggs torched them. 206 total yards, with Stephon Diggs having 8 catches for 106 yards and that really bad touchdown. You see here, trips out left, which means 3 receivers, but only 2 defenders. So I think it was just a miscommunication or just a really bad defensive formation. But that allowed Buffalo to break the tie, gain some momentum, and eventually go on to win the game. With Baltimore's season now over, let's get to the off-season preview. Baltimore has 27 free agents, so let's start with the unrestricted guys. Pass rusher Matthew Judon, they tried to come to an agreement with him last year for a long-term contract, eventually played the season on the franchise tag, but Baltimore needs to sign one of their pass rushers, either him or Yannick Ngakoue, who of course they acquired from Minnesota right before the trade deadline. Judon had the better stats, but Yannick Ngakoue garnered more attention from opposing offenses. And of course, he's a former Terp, so my vote is for him. Willie Snead, one of their most consistent receivers. He really likes playing for Baltimore. He likes his role, so I think he'll eventually end up re-signing. Derek Wolfe, one of Baltimore's better leaders, showed that in the playoffs. The stats weren't always there, but you know, the disruption was there. He wasn't fully healthy all season long, which nobody really is during a full season of football, but I'm not really sure what to make of that one. Center Matt Skura, Baltimore struggled with him to begin the season, and of course they struggled with Patrick McCarry in this playoff game and a few other times during the season, like the loss to New England. So I'm not sure what they do at center. Maybe they draft somebody there. Robert Griffin III was released. Safety Anthony Levine, they'll probably look to get stronger in their secondary. Chris Moore, mostly just a practice squad player. When he did play, he played special teams, so he's probably gone. Tyus Bowser, probably gone. Pernell McPhee, re-signed before the season. He's probably gone. Long snapper Morgan Cox, as I said with the Washington football team last week, you don't really see long snappers move on too often, so they probably re-sign him. DJ Fluker was signed to shore up the right guard position after Marshall Yanda retired, and he didn't have the best season, so I'm not sure if he returns. That's probably doubtful. Cornerback Jamon Williams was already released. Dez Bryant, You know, he added an element to Baltimore's offense in the red zone, but they can probably get younger at the positions, so I don't think he comes back. Jihad Ward, with a lot of Baltimore's pass rushers heading into free agency, I could see them trying to bring him back. He won't cost a lot, but he did have some productive moments for Baltimore this season. And on to the restricted free agents. Gus Edwards, they already released Mark Ingram, saving them $5 million towards the cap in 2021. So I think that's to go towards Gus Edwards and some other additions to the team. So I think he is a safe bet to return for an extension. Devontae Harris, cornerback, they already released him. And Chris Board, he's restricted. So I don't know how much attention he garners from other teams. Can probably see him come back unless they decide not to tender him. As for Baltimore's offseason needs, they have the 27th overall pick in the NFL draft, and with the #1 rushing attack, but the 32nd ranked passing attack, I think it's a safe bet that they will go receiver. Or maybe they try to shore up their offensive line, which performed terribly this season, and that's one of their biggest needs heading into the offseason. Add to that some pass rushers, whether re-signing their own guys or looking at other free agents or even through the draft. I think those are Baltimore's 3 biggest positions of need. But they, of course, made some of those cuts with the expectation that they will put in a lot of work in the offseason. As for that #1 rushing attack, but the worst passing attack, wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown was again outspoken, saying that's not right, that's not balanced. We got to find a way to balance our game. Even with our great rushing attack, we got to be able to throw the ball and be able to move the ball through the air. And while I don't think he's wrong, I don't think Hollywood is the type of leader that can come out and just say that. Rounding out the football news, the Washington football team named former Carolina Panthers GM Marty Herney as their new general manager. This was pretty much expected, as Ron Rivera brought over pretty much everyone else from Carolina, but I really wanted to see Washington go with their vice president of player personnel, Kyle Smith. I'm not sure what this means for him, but nonetheless, I trust Ron Rivera, and I'm excited to see what next season brings. Now for the NBA. Last week, I suspected that the Washington Wizards would have their back-to-back against the Cleveland Cavaliers postponed, and that was indeed factual, as both their games Sunday and Monday were postponed, as well as their games scheduled for tomorrow against the Charlotte Hornets. That now makes 5 consecutive postponements for the Washington Wizards, dealing with health and safety protocols. They've had 6 players test positive for COVID, while 3 others were in the health and safety protocols. And now the next opportunity they have to play would be Friday against the Milwaukee Bucks. The league mandates that there are 10 to 14 days between players testing positive and having their negative results. So depending on when the NBA sent them into that protocol, they last played against the Phoenix Suns on January the 11th. So their next day when all the positive tests came out was the 12th, and Friday would mark 10 days from then. So maybe they play, maybe they don't. But if they don't, that's 6 consecutive postponements. And this is exactly why the NBA only released half of their schedule. In other team news, they released center Anzic Pasasniks. Pasasniks was on a non-guaranteed contract after playing last year on a 2-way deal. And I talked about him last week, saying that he wasn't the option to replace Thomas Bryant. His only game this season he played in, he had 5 turnovers in 6 minutes, so I knew that he wasn't the answer, and now they released themselves from that non-guaranteed contract. In other organization news, the Wizards G League affiliate, the Capital City Go-Go, promoted Amber Nichols to be the general manager of the team, making her only the 2nd woman named GM of an NBA G League team. So congrats to her. She is also the cousin of former Washington Wizard John Wall. The Washington Nationals made news in the international prospect pool, signing Armando Cruz, a shortstop out of the Dominican Dominican Republic, giving him a team record-tying $3.9 million signing bonus. Cruz was the 5th-ranked international prospect according to MLB Pipeline, and while it's not too often that these guys make the league right away, if you look at Juan Soto, who was the 25th-ranked prospect back in 2015, it should bode well for the name Armando Cruz. The Washington Nationals also signed left-handed pitcher Jon Lester to a 1-year deal worth a reported $5 million and a mutual option for 2022. Jon Lester is now 37 years old, so you shouldn't expect the same player who won World Series with the Boston Red Sox and Chicago Cubs, but he should slide in nicely as the team's 4th pitcher in the rotation. As for the Baltimore Orioles, they also made news in the international player pool, signing the first 2 players to 7-figure contracts in the franchise's history, giving 30th-ranked prospect McCall Hernandez a $1.2 million signing bonus, and giving catcher Samuel Basallo a $1.3 million signing bonus. DC United has named Hernan Losada as the 8th head coach in franchise history, finally ending a 3-month span interviewing 25 candidates, with reportedly a few declining the position. Losada was last the head coach of Beerschot, which is a team in Belgium's 1st division, and he is the team's first hire of Latinx descent without experience in the United States. Losada also becomes the Major League Soccer's youngest active head coach. DC United's CEO Jason Levian said, "Hernan is a strong leader and strategist and attack-minded coach. We are confident that our players and community will take quickly to him and will thoroughly enjoy his high-energy, forward-thinking soccer." Losada said, "In my opinion, the best way to win is to create as many chances as possible through high-energy, vertical attacking soccer." And that brings an end to today's episode. Thank you everybody for tuning in. God bless.